It's interesting that you're, studying at some quite prestigious and large, tertiary institutions. How do you feel as an Adventist in those spaces, navigating that with your Adventist faith? It's just a curious question that came to me as you spoke about your sort of study history.
To understand how I got there, you have to understand why I chose La Sierra. So in the United States, when I was first thinking I'm going to go study theology, let me go ahead and look and see what can I find there. I look at Andrews, I looked at all these different schools, and everyone I went through, a lot of where the professors got their PhDs were Andrews. And I'm not saying anything against, our own denomination's, PhD granters. That's wonderful. But one of the things that I really hoped for when I went to go to pursue a theology undergraduate is that I was going to learn not only a more educated and articulate way to express Adventism, but also a way in which I could engage with the wider world of academics and theologians and pastors that wouldn't just be an exclusive, perspective that perhaps I was already familiar with. I wanted to be challenged. So one of the things that I noticed when I went to La Sierra is that none of the professors, at least the ones I remembered seeing on the faculty page, had degrees from Andrews. They were all from Harvard, Princeton, from Claremont, from Graduate Theological Union at Berkeley. So I was like, oh, okay. There are Adventists and they've gone out to these institutions. And so that was my first realization, oh, wow, okay, that's great. Those are, their names. I mean, honestly, having gone through Yale, a name is a name, okay? The good education's good education. The professors can make all the difference. But nonetheless, it was okay, so this is where I'm going. So then I went, and the thing that was funny is that over time I started to realize there's actually quite a lot of Adventists who do end up going. When I was at Yale Divinity School, there was 4 or 5 other students who were Adventists who were at Yale. And it seems like there was a rotation of always 4 students or so at Yale who were Adventists coming from around the world. So it's not that we're not out there doing it, it's that it's not highlighted. It's not being pushed out there for people to know that Adventists do go to these places. It's not abnormal. It's abnormal enough that we're a marginal community who does it. And, but we are a marginal community usually in most of the places that we are found.
I just want to give a quick shout out over to Adventist Today and thank them for being the sponsors of this video.
What's interesting the most to me is that some of our key things that we really talk about as Adventists when it comes to biblical studies, right, are things that are quite common in scholarship. Yet I remember before I ever went and ever dreamt I would actually get to Yale Divinity School, I went ahead and was watching pre-recorded lectures of Dale Martin at Yale, which you can find on YouTube. They're fantastic. But it's an undergraduate course on the New Testament. And, one of his first lectures, he's just doing pop quizzes about when you die, does your soul keep living and immediately go to heaven? And no, if you think that, all right, then please go down the hall to Plato's course, because that's where that idea really stems from in Christian history.
Most people would say that Christians or religious people believe in the immortality of the soul. And that is part of a good bit of Christian doctrine. That again is not something that's in the Bible, really. And it's not even the best interpretation of official Christian orthodoxy. According to official Christian orthodoxy, the form of your afterlife existence is the resurrection of the body. That's what the New Testament talks about, either the resurrection of the flesh or the resurrection of the body. That's contrary to what most people kind of assume is what people believe. The point about this, and where do they get the idea of the immortality of the soul? Much more from Plato. So again, it raises the issue, if you want to know most about the most influential aspects for Western civilization, would it be better for you to take an entire semester on Plato than it would on the New Testament? I'm saying it might, actually.
So there's a lot of things that you kind of realize suddenly, oh, this is I fit in pretty good. It's some of the other ones are more struggling in some of the areas that they struggle at. Those aren't the areas that an Adventist would struggle at. Right. We'll have our own struggles, but they won't. They're weird because oh yeah, you're just figuring that out. That's cool.
That's really fascinating. It seems that there's like a lot more cultural or historical influence into our reading of scripture, just based on what you said with Plato, reading into life after death, that sort of a stance on things, which is, I think, a widespread view of Christianity, how that can be influenced in that way. And I guess